I rise to speak in support of the NaRRA bill. I have watched the passage of the NaRRA bill in that other place and seen the really hard work and serious thinking, crafting and drafting that were employed by the Andrew Holness administration, yes, the one who has won 3 consecutive general elections, to create that piece of legislation. Very serious and intentional work was put into getting the bill ready to serve the Melissa hurricane-devastated, needy, but very patient Jamaicans, and at the same time make the NaRRA administrators accountable and subjected to good governance. NaRRA will be expected to accomplish a lot, Mr. President, but its main broad objectives are these. Clearly, I'm going to paraphrase, the bill is written there. Use its authority, capacity, and resources to develop projects, programs, and detailed plans, including scope, delivery arrangements, and timelines for the implementation of reconstruction and resilience projects appearing on the official list. Mr. President, I went back and I read the bill carefully. Execute these projects with speed, efficiency, accountability, and on scale to meet demanding timelines and budgeted targets. Need I remind everyone that the reason why we're putting NaRRA in is to make sure that a Category 5 hurricane that has never hit the country before, that denuded 7 of the 14 parishes, had to be responded with speed and efficiency. Mr. President, who provides? I mentioned the official list just now. So who, Mr. President, provides the official list to NaRRA? The reason why I'm going down this road, because there's a lot of discussion about people having whole heap of power, spend whole heap of hundreds of billions of dollars, and they don't seem to be accountable, and they're trying to avoid accountability and transparency. Nonsense, Mr. President. So, Section 17, I'm going to read the bill, because I suspect much of what I've heard, they haven't read the bill, or they've forgotten it if they read it. Section 17 in Part 3 of the bill tells us, in Clause 1, the Cabinet shall cause to be issued to the official list of approved and resilient projects, strategic investment projects. It's the Cabinet shall cause this to be issued. The official list of the Cabinet. Let me just remind people who the Cabinet are. The law allows the Prime Minister to choose 2, but up to 4 senators into his Cabinet. Everybody else is an elected representative of the people of Jamaica. You cannot get more direct democracy than that. Your representative is in the Cabinet making the decisions for you. And them get the job, okay? The authority, Mr. President, develop projects, programs, and detailed plans, including projects, and reconstruction and so on, as I mentioned before. So, Mr. President, it is clear that the official list on which the Minister and the CEO will act comes from the highest executive body in the country, the Cabinet. And as we all know, most of the Cabinet members are directly elected by the people of the country, which means, Mr. President, that the direct representatives of the electorate decide on the list of projects that will be executed by the authority. There could hardly be more direct or more senior democratic approval body for projects than has been written in this NaRRA bill. Why am I saying that? Because it's being said that NaRRA has no kind of accountability. Nonsense. Read the bill. Go and read Clause 17, for instance, and I'm going to refer to you to 9, 10, and 11 soon, because it seems those sections have not been read. Mr. President, that approving body and authority is the Cabinet itself, subject to subsection 3, implement those projects, programs, and plans for approved reconstruction and resilience projects, this is section 3, subsection 3, shall not be implemented without the prior approval of the Cabinet. Okay, as my colleague Senator Duncan told you before, that's the highest executive body in this country. This, Mr. President, is good governance. Prior to spending and execution, when a company, the Cabinet has to approve it. I heard someone over there, I think it was my colleague, Senator Small Ferguson, that said that, look, you have a board and the CEO reports to a board. You know that we have discussed boards a lot. But, Mr. President, I put it to you, when there's a crisis in a company, the board invariably and sometimes often designate the chairman as an executive chairman. Because there's a crisis, he takes over. Sometimes the CEO is pushed out, he's kept. But the chairman becomes that person. We have had a crisis called Melissa. Out of that crisis, NaRRA has been created to make sure decisions can be made fast. We can't go through all the stuff that I'm used to, which I'll tell you about shortly. So the executive chairmanship is not unusual when you have a crisis. We are dealing with Melissa as a crisis for this country. Mr. President, because there has been so much discussion, misinformation, and apparent misunderstanding of parts of the bill, and also because it is apparent that some who speak in criticism of the oversight arrangements in the legislation have apparently never read the bill or many parts of the bill. I want to read into the record clauses 9, 10, and 11 of the bill, they're not long, and make a few comments on the arrangements to provide oversight to NaRRA. The authority, number 9, clause 1, the authority shall keep proper accounts and other records in relation to its business, and shall prepare a statement of in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. But we're pretending that this is not in the bill. It is in the bill, promulgated from time to time by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica, and such accounts shall be audited annually by an auditor appointed by each year of the Chief Executive Officer and the approval of Cabinet Secretary. And the statement so audited shall form part. Well, you pretend that the law hasn't said it, and the law is saying it here again. So read it. An auditor appointed under subsection 1 shall be registered, listen, public accountant with the meaning of section 2 of the Public Accountancy Act. The auditor shall be entitled to at all reasonable times, to examine the accounts of the authority. The Auditor General shall be entitled at all times to examine the accounts and other records in relation to this authority. Mr. President, I want to point out something here. Very often, because I have to deal with this as a former chairman of government companies, private companies, that we can talk anything we want. Here and elsewhere, and I've said that in my speech, the authority shall furnish the minister. Why am I telling you that? Right now, my agencies have to report. The Auditor General has responsibility to do most of those audits. Some of those, Mr. Chairman, have backed up for years, 5, 6, 7 years, because the Auditor General in this morning's radio report, I heard her, it's being reported that she doesn't have enough staff. So we, with foresight, said that not only the Auditor General must exist, but we are making it in this law, which you seem to have missed, that we're making it a requirement that the external auditor must also do the audit report, which is, no, it's not in most laws. Go and read it. I know it. Yes. A copy of the annual report and audited financial statements of the authority shall be submitted no later than 4 months. We know that. The minister, within reasonable time, must cause a copy of the report together with the annual statement of accounts and the auditor's report to come to the House of Representatives. So the speaker just before me was talking about accountability and so on. The highest accountability place is the Parliament. The minister is obliged to bring the reports here and the audited statements. Anybody after that can look at them and argue them. You can, accountant can, a consultant can. But your arguments do not make that point. So let me make it for you. So, Mr. President, your arguments do not make that point. So, Mr. President, in these 3 clauses, we have a fairly complete rendition of what is normally accepted as comprehensive and transparent reporting by the external auditors of the operating and particularly the financial conduct of the business of NaRRA. The bill records in detail the particular set of principles that must be used in preparing the accounts. And Senator Thame might really like this. It says the principles that must be followed are the generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP. Not even IFRS. GAAP is the set of principles. The GAAP is the set of principles followed by most United States auditors and companies. So when much of that 6.5 million that you talk about come from U.S. funded places, GAAP is the one insisted in here and by the accountants. I have served on a number of, on many audit committees for public and big private companies. And this is what the regulators very, very often need. So what we are proposing in the bill, 9, 10, 11, 17, are very transparent, very professional, and thorough, Mr. President, for oversight and for regulatory. That is the truth. Not even a little piece less. The external auditors must submit the completed audit of the authority within months after the end of the financial year, a strong requirement to get delivery of audit reports. So, Mr. President, please notice that unlike the arrangement for most public companies, government agencies and ministries, where the Auditor General is generally responsible for the annual audits and may allow an independent external auditor to do the audit of a particular government entity on the workload of, because of the workload of the AG, which I heard this morning, she's saying she needs auditors. This bill codifies that both the AG and independent external auditors have access to the authority's books when, Mr. President? Sometimes, no. At all times. No complaint about access and transparency and accountability here, Mr. President. Those complaints don't stand. So, Mr. President, I just listened again to the speaker from the other side who spoke just before me. And what I'm going to say, it would sound as if while she was writing, I wrote this part of the speech. But clearly I didn't. I have reflected on the behavior. No. You know better than that. I have reflected on the behavior of the members of the opposition as they sought, apparently, Mr. President, not to get help quickly to those Jamaicans who need restoration of property. I have been, everything I've listened, you want to do this. You have time to respond. Nor and livelihoods after Hurricane Melissa, nor to help our beloved country, Jamaica, use NaRRA to quickly and accountably build a more resilient future for our country. But rather, Mr. President, I watch them try to do everything to distort, delay, and even destroy the NaRRA legislation if they could have done so. JLP, I remember, Mr. President, when we were doing the IMF program. I was then the chairman of, now Prime Minister, long time ago, leader of the opposition. Long time. And I remember every time Dr. Bert Stern and subsequently Dr. Uma Ramakrishna from the IMF came, they sat us over that office over near the, you know where it is, where the leader of the, I've forgotten, of the opposition is. Every time, I don't even remember. Every time they came, Mr. President, they asked us almost the first question, pointedly, will you keep the terms and conditions of the agreement that is being, and ad nauseum, and with great patience, because the Prime Minister is one of the most patient men I've ever met. Patient. Tell them over and over, yes. But, Mr. President, we did not only keep it. When we came to power, we busted it up and excelled it. But this is what happened. We made sure, and I remember, and I'm telling you this, Andrew Holness, through that time said, this is a national project. This has to be done. We will not oppose it. We never oppose one of those bills. So, Mr. President, we know what it means to join in unity, to build a country. The PNP have lost, it seems, they have lost their course. They have lost 3 consecutive general elections, Mr. President, and they seem to be desperate. After the most honorable Andrew Holness led us to victory in 2016, they fought us tooth and nail over crime. The leader of the opposition, the former leader of opposition business, I almost misspoke about leader of the opposition. Time over time, Peter Bunting, stay over there. Where is the crime plan? Where is the crime plan? The Minister of National Security, Prime Minister would ad nauseum tell them, we are spending the money on people, on equipment, and systems. And we got there, and Mr. President, for the last 3 consecutive years, we dropped crime by 9%, 19%, and last year 43%. There is no more mocking about where's the crime plan. Because and you should learn, when you talked about NaRRA, you should be careful. You should remember how we have handled crime, how we have handled COVID-19, how we have handled burial, and all the time never borrow any money. We know how to manage things and leadership. So, NaRRA, Mr. President, we've never done a NaRRA before. So we are going through this, and we have to get speed. So we look at all that they're trying to do, and this has come to my mind, Mr. President. Despite losing 3 consecutive general elections to the young but mature and strategic thinker of a leader called Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, and the Jamaica Labour Party, the PNP, their leader of the opposition, mind you, and their members of parliament, Mr. President, behave as if they possess They possess the God-given right to run this country and decide on what legislation the three-time elected by the people Jamaica Labour Party government should pass. Okay? So, Mr. President, the people, we hear the discussion, but the way they talk about it, oh, he has too much power, no oversight, no, that's not true. Read the bill. I just read it for you. Mr. President, is which false God the PNP them I pray to? And which false God I tell them I listen to? PNP is like the unwise, terribly weak and misled husband of the evil and wicked Queen Jezebel, the hapless, you see where you're sitting? So, who was weak loser? King Ahab. King Ahab was her husband, who worshipped the pagan god called Baal. Clearly, Mr. President, weak King Ahab of the PNP and his hapless MPs and followers have lost their way. Just listen to what we heard from the speaker just before me. Lost their way, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, I have observed that when PNP politicians cannot achieve power at the ballot box, they engage in what is called lawfare. Not all of them. There are others who are good PNP people. But some of them engage in lawfare. In some other jurisdictions, that's what they call it. And they try to use tyrannical excesses of process to bog down legislation and try to derail the legislative objectives of the government, and in the process hinder needed benefits getting to the Jamaican people. So, Mr. President, I put to you that we have enough oversight regulators and regulations in place. They include, but are not limited to, the Cabinet, the Parliament, the various oversight committees of Parliament, and the independent auditor, the Integrity Commission, and on the long accountability and compliance bodies. Indeed, Mr. President, many other speakers in that other place before Senator Dana Morris Dixon in this Senate last week, and others in the Senate after her, laid out the phalanx of oversight regulators which exist to judge the work and professional performance of the newly proposed NaRRA. So, they try to use legislative complexity when that's not used. They shifted the nuance to the Joint Select Committee. And the Joint Select Committee, Mr. President, I know the immense value of the JSC. And this is the last thing I'm going to tell you about that thing. I passed 2 bills from the ministry using the Joint Select Committee. There were security interests in personal property, SIPA, and the Insolvency Act last year. But, Mr. President, the JSC, the Joint Select Committee, was not created with speed and urgency in mind. And speed and urgency are 2 important requirements NaRRA needs to get established and go to work. I have chaired the Infrastructure Committee of Cabinet, and some of those projects take 12 to 20 months to get through, to get to a decision. Now, the Melissa debacle does not allow us another 20 months to get a project through. Okay? So, given the pressing need to get the objectives of NaRRA cemented, Mr. President, I put it to you that the endless search for the perfect rendition of the NaRRA bill must not become the enemy of speed and urgency needed to establish and implement NaRRA in order, why are we doing it? In order to build a much more resilient Jamaica into the future. the sunset date is not an unreasonable request, but we have never had a NaRRA. We said that we will have a sunset date. Prime Minister comes to Parliament every week. He is the minister. When we see how things are fleshing out, that can be done. It's not a crime not to have a sunset date at this stage. So, Mr. President, what have we done? What have we done about getting good governance? Dr. Peter Henry Blair's name was called. Not only is he a professor from Stanford, which my opposite over there would seem to have preferred that he would have studied somewhere in Moscow, but he didn't. So Mr. President, not only is he the former head of the New York University School of Business and a tenured professor at Stanford, he also sits on two of the biggest boards in the United States, Citigroup and Nike. Okay? So, Mr. President, this man who has that kind of reputation, and I suspect the others that the Prime Minister will appoint will be of similar stature, has no interest. If he can't get information, Senator Small Ferguson, Peter Blair not staying around. And we will make sure, the Prime Minister is going to make sure he gets the information. But it doesn't have to be codified. You can't codify everything. It's not an Articles of Association. Even the Articles of Association of a company does not say you must have an internal auditor. Yeah, it's all right. So, Mr. President, I once again, as I've done in the Senate and many times before, in this Senate and elsewhere, seriously encourage businesses across every sector of our economy. Banking, distribution, manufacturing, hospitality, farming, construction, and development to prepare to participate in the 2.4 billion portion of the 6.5 billion facility that has been provided by our international financial partners. The World Bank, the IMF, the IDB, the Latin American and Caribbean Development Bank, and CBD, we never have to go to them. They say, we look at your records, we see what Melissa's done. Here is a package of financing for you. We must use it right, and as my colleague, Senator Duncan, just said, the government has moved the amount down from 150 million to 15 million for Jamaicans to come in and take it up. So please, Jamaican businesses and entrepreneurs and business leaders, please take it up. Get ready. Make sure you get linked into Fast Jamaica program as outlined in this bill, and it starts at a mere $15 million US. Mr. President, I really strongly support this bill, if it pleases you, sir.